to the Compliance Kitchen. This is Sylvia, and today I want to quickly take a look at a recent OFAC enforcement action. This involved TD Bank NA. The press release from OFAC was published toward the end of the year, so around December 23rd of 2021, and they explained that OFAC reached a $115,000 settlement of two cases that were involving TD Bank NA. This was for apparent violations of the U.S. Sanctions on North Korea and also foreign narcotics kingpin sanctions regulations. So, according to the release, the bank processed transactions and maintained accounts on behalf of employees of the North Korean mission to the UN without having a license from OFAC. The enforcement release, which of course I have a link for you guys if you want more detail on compliancekitchen.com. So the enforcement release tells us that at account opening, the account holders of all 9 accounts presented to the bank their North Korean passports. However, these passports did not generate an alert during the customer screening process because the bank relied heavily on a vendor-supplied PEP or politically exposed persons list, which these North Korean individuals were not on the PEP list. And in addition, the bank employees often misidentified North Korea, referring to it as Korea or South Korea, or using a country code meant for South Korea, or also sometimes left the citizenship field blank in the customer profiles. So as a result, the bank's screening system did not flag any of these accounts because the citizenship information was either missing or it was incorrect. So OFAC determined some of the aggravating and mitigating factors as they usually do in their investigations. As to the aggravating factors, the release tells us that the bank failed to exercise due caution or care in processing 1,479 transactions in apparent violations of the North Korea sanctions regulations for more than a year as a result of multiple sanctions screening breakdowns. The bank had reason to know that it maintained accounts for North Korean nationals because at account opening, the account holders presented their passports, which were North Korean passports, and the bank is a large and commercially sophisticated financial institution with a global presence. Now, as to the mitigating factors, OFAC determined that no managers or supervisors at the bank appeared to have had actual knowledge about the subject accounts or transactions. Although the 1,479 transactions that totaled over $380,000 were processed in apparent violation of the North Korea sanctions regulations, all of the transactions would likely have been licensable under existing licensing policy from OFAC. The bank has represented that it has terminated the conduct that led to these apparent violations and undertook a number of remedial measures, such as enhanced controls for identifying government officials of sanctioned countries. It's also updated its operating procedures to specify the reviews of customers in or affiliated with sanctioned jurisdictions, that there's going to be an escalation process. And the bank also provided targeted training to address adjudication criteria for determining whether potential customers may be politically exposed persons from a sanctioned country, and also escalation requirements in such cases. And the bank also voluntarily self-disclosed and cooperated with OFAC. Now, as to the second violation, because this was a settlement that covered two cases, So the second violation, OFAC explained that the bank maintained accounts for a U.S. resident who was listed on OFAC's SDN or specially designated nationals list. The enforcement release tells us that Esperanza Caridad Maradiaga Lopez was added to the SDN list in September of 2013. In 2016, so she was already on the list, Lopez opened 2 joint accounts at a Miami area branch of the bank. A sanctions screening alert was generated for Lopez, and despite first and last name and also her birth date matching the SDN list, the reviewer dismissed the alert because there was no match on the full name and geographical location. So for several years later, alerts kept triggering, and it was determined by a reviewer, finally, one of the alerts to be a true hit, triggering the blocking of Lopez's accounts and disclosure to OFAC. So what happened was Lopez's name appeared in the bank system as Esperanza Maradiaga Lopez, while the OFAC SDN list had her name as Esperanza Caridad Maradiaga Lopez. So there was an extra middle name there, but the birth date matched matched the SDN listing. So OFAC determined that the aggravating factors here were that the bank failed to exercise due caution of care for U.S. economic sanctions requirements by incorrectly adjudicating high confidence sanctions screening alerts 4 times over 4 years, despite the fact that the birth date and the first and last name did match the SDN list. And this enabled 145 apparent violations. The bank allowed over $35,000 in transactions by Lopez, who is a person on the SDN list. And of course, the bank is a large and sophisticated financial institution. OFAC then determined the mitigating factors, which was the managers or supervisors from the bank appeared to have no actual knowledge regarding the conduct that led to the apparent violations. All the transactions would likely have been licensable under existing OFAC policy had the bank applied for a license. The bank also represented that it had terminated the conduct that led to the apparent violations and undertook various remedial measures, such as implementing an explicit sequence for adjudicating and escalating alerts, implementing more specific standards and examples to determine a match or a hit on a screened individual, accounting for spelling variations, transposed or middle names, also implemented more specific standards and examples for determining a date of birth match, and required additional training related to the root causes of these apparent violations. So, as usual, if you guys find this helpful, maybe for your compliance training or your program, and want to take a look at the press release and the enforcement release for exact information as presented by the government, I have that available on compliancekitchen.com.